So today we have the Sarb033 on the left and we have the Sarb035 on the right. The only difference between these two watches are the color. So color of the dial and color of the date window. So the color. They're both incredible watches, and I've even deemed these watches as being the best Seiko watch on the market. And honestly, of all the micro brands released, these watches for me are still hard to beat. And I still think that they are underrated. I know there's a lot of people out there saying that these are overrated and the design is not great and blah, blah, blah. I would dare you to find a watch that's as classy, as elegant, and as purposeful as these two watches. But just the Sarb line in general. You know, the Sarb033 has been released in some other variants as well. They're a little bit harder to come by. I have reviewed some of them on my channel, which you can see. But if I just put them on my wrist, you can see how elegant they are. So my wrist is 8 inches. And I just think they look so classy. So if you start with the specs, the dial size is 38 mil. It has a date window at the 3, it has Sapphire on top, it has a 20 mil lug width. So it's a strap monster. And then it has a lug of 44 mil. It has an exhibition case back. I don't know if I can show you properly. But yeah, and it houses the 6R15 movement. So if we just talk about the movement to begin with. So the movement is the 6R15. I've been happy with how it performs. I know a lot of people are not. It has the 3 Hz sweeping, so it's not the most premium sweeping that you can find or the smoothest sweeping you can find on the market. It has, for me, it has been running plus minus 10 seconds, but I think it is advertised as a lot less accurate. But for me, it's been plus minus 10 seconds a day. It has a power reserve of 50 hours, which is nice. So it's like 2+ days. And yeah, I think it's a workhorse movement. I think it's a little bit more premium than the NH35, and it's been reliable for me, so I've been happy with the movement. It has a date window at the 3, and the way you change it is by putting the crown at the first position, and then you can pretty much change it. I don't use the date window as much. I just don't use the date function in general, and if you have followed my channel, you would know that I'm not the biggest fan of date windows. I just think they obstruct a beautiful dial too much, and I just wish that, especially Seiko, you know, they have like the best dials on the market, and the fact that they put such a beautiful dial on a watch and then destroy it with a date window, I think it's a crime, honestly. You know, a watch like this should not. I mean, a watch specifically this watch, I think it functions. I don't know why, but I've had the Sarb029, if you know that watch, beautiful black enamel dial, and they pretty much just destroyed it with the date window, which was probably one of the reasons why I even sold it. But that's the movement. It hacks. Yeah, and you can wind it as well. And you can just change the time by scrolling the crown. It's a it's a good movement. So we have the dial. Let's talk about the dial. It's probably one of the best features of the watch, and probably one of the best dials, period, on the market. There's nothing, I think, close to the dials of these. I think there's different dials that serve different purposes, has different textures, aesthetics. But if you look at the dial, right, the indices are just incredible. They're multifaceted. It has a pivot loom at the top, they're rectangular, and has a second track like around the edge, which has a slight angle, but it has a perfect angle. You know, the edge has the exact angle that it's supposed to have without it obstructing the experience. It's almost like it's gluing everything together. Some edges that have these types of second tracks that has an angle usually are too steep or they're too wide. And this, I feel like, is perfect. I know it sounds like I'm over-exaggerating the watch, but I don't feel like I am, honestly. I just think the watches are just so incredible that they just have a lot of things going right for them. You have the Seiko logo at the 12, which is applied, and if you do macro shots of it, you can actually be able to tell there's a small shadow, so it's almost like it's lifted from the dial, which is a cool effect. Then you have automatic printing on the 6th, because it's an automatic watch with 23 jewels. That's pretty much the dial. Super simple, super clean, just classy watch. I don't think there's much else to really say. I think it's, you know, this type of engineering is really Seiko flexing their muscles. I really think that dial, Seiko just makes the best dials in the market, and especially for the price point, you really cannot get anything as elegant and intricate dials as what Seiko produces for us. And I think the Sarbs are not an exception to that. One thing that is funny about the Sarb line is that they were never released in the States or Europe or any other place in the world. They were actually produced for the Japanese market. Why they made it that way, I don't know why. I would love to know why they only made certain amounts of watches for the Japanese market, and for some reason they actually do that. You know, Seiko is obviously a Japanese company, but they actually release a lot of limited editions only for their own market. And I think the Sarbs were some of those lines which did that. Why they only did that, I have no clue, because these watches would have been a slam dunk around the world, and they were, you know, but when they were released, it was only like $300. So they had to be shipped from Japan to the rest of the world for us to enjoy it. And I don't think Seiko really understood like how great of a watches they had produced, like what type of fan following they were released, because they have received an amazing fan following for these watches, and for a good reason, you know, because they have pretty much, especially today, it's almost like these watches, they were released 10 years ago. I think it started with a watch that was called Spirit, and then they changed it into the Sarb. Like, these watches were produced with proportions that now are even better than they were 10 years ago. You know, I think 10 years ago, these watches were considered small and not interesting for a lot of watch people because we loved loud and bigger watches. But now the trend is going into more formal and smaller watches like 36, 38, 40 mil. And these have just stood the test of time. Like, they're getting better every single day, and they're really just timeless watches. That's what I would call these. Probably the most timeless watches released by Seiko ever. That's why I call these the best Seiko watches of all time. And I know a lot of people will disagree with me. That, you know, there's this SKX 007, which presented an amazing quality when it was released, an impressive value. But now I think that these have definitely taken that throne, and they've had that for a long time. And again, I know a lot of people are saying these are overhyped, overpriced, and the design is not proper and the quality is not great. I don't get that at all. Like, show me a watch that's close to what these possesses at $500. Like, I dare you to find a watch that's close to this. Or if there's difference between saying that you don't like the watch because it's too simple, and then blatantly saying that they're overhyped, because I think they get the proper amount of hype. They're not like, there's a lot of people that don't actually know about these watches. But I think these watches are for the people that love simplistic watches, who loves the brand Seiko, but loves a more simple touch to their watches. They love a simple dial, they love, simple bracelet. Even the casing, it has a lot of elegancy to them, right? Seiko, they have these cases that just has a lot of workmanship on them, and you can definitely see and feel that. But even then, it still feels simple. It doesn't feel ostentatious. It doesn't feel like out of the line. It just feels clean, I guess, compared to German watches which are very flat in its profile, which I'm probably a bigger fan of, honestly. But I just appreciate the workmanship that goes into building and designing and crafting something like this. It's just incredible. One thing is 38 millimeters, which I think is just the perfect size for anyone. I have an 8-inch wrist, but even for somebody who has a smaller wrist or a bigger wrist, I just think 38 mil just works. I think that's the new classical sizing that I think it's just a great size. 36 mil has been something that a lot of people have been gravitating towards lately as well, and I love that for a dress watch. But I think it just works. I think so. I'm actually probably gonna sell the Sarb035, and you might wonder, why do I want to sell the Sarb035? Am I selling both of these watches, or am I only selling one? I'm only gonna sell this one. And there's a couple of reasons for it. One, I have enough watches now lately where I want to consolidate some of them so I can really just enjoy and use some of the ones that I want to use more, right? I have a bunch of watches that I bought but never really used, but I bought them because I know I would like them throughout time. And even like the Sarb035, I've not used as much, right? Because I bought it. I bought these watches as the main purpose of, I'm going to like them. It's some of those watches that just fits my design aesthetic and purpose. So I would buy them and just keep them, but I wouldn't necessarily wear them. So I'd buy like 10 of the watches while having these watches in my watch box, knowing well that these are the watches that I prefer the most. But I would still buy other watches, and it just wouldn't make any sense to me. So I started selling off a lot of watches and really trying to keep a core collection of watches that I really loved. And the Sarb035 I genuinely love as well. I really go for different dials, but it's like simple dials, but like the dials have different textures, like a mother of pearl, or they could have a waffle pattern or something else about the dial. But I still like the simplistic touch to it. I don't want like a ton of movements going on, different functions, different mechanics. I want it to be super simple. Even though I don't mind the day window on the Sarbs, I still would have preferred it without. I still think that the watch without the day window probably would have been better, but I definitely do understand it does give, like the day window on these watches does give like a business vibe to it. I don't know how to explain it. It's like, that's what I think is so cool about the Sarbs. They work on so many levels, right? They work on a level of like business, formal, and everyday watch. They can pretty much do anything. But one of the coolest things about the Sarb035 is like how it breathes like new air to your collection. Even though it's simple, and the cream dial is simple as well, the color just brings a new set of perspective on watches. Because I think mainly you have a lot of black watches. I actually don't have like a ton of black watches as far as I know. I have different types of watches, like different types of textures and colors. But I think the Sarb035, if you have a lot of the same divers and same color watches, I think the Sarb035 is going to be one of your best purchases you're going to make. And I honestly think you would actually start wearing this type of watch more than all the divers and big watches with different complications, because at the end of the day, we simple people, we like simple things. We love when products have a specific purpose. And a watch, it looks cool, it's an accessory, but it's supposed to tell the time. And maybe a day window just to kind of spice it up, as it has some sort of complication. So I recommend, these two watches for everybody, but I just think I just need to, sometimes you just need perspective. You need to take 10 steps back to really understand what goes on. And I just want to sell this off. I want to sell off a lot of watches. I've done that for some time now, just to really understand my collection, to understand the watches that I have and what I want to wear and what I don't want to wear. But this might be one of those watches I'm going to regret selling. I'm not going to lie. So I might rebuy it at some point. They're not so hard to come by. I might have to pay a little bit more to get them fast, but I think that's fine. It's such a cool watch that I don't mind paying maybe a little bit more for it. One other interesting point, again, with the 38 mil sizing, again, in Japan, they were seen as bigger watches, which is kind of interesting to me. But again, it's because of the wrist size. I have an 8-inch wrist, and for me, it's probably, I think some people might even say that it's small. I don't think it is. I think it looks amazing on my wrist. I also love, another aspect of the cream dial I love is just how it pops on my darker skin. I think as opposed to the black, I think black just looks great on everybody, but the cream just pops in a way that I really love and enjoy. And I've been wearing it lately just to understand whether I want to sell it or not. And I probably don't want to, but you have to free up. Sometimes it's just an economic thing too. Like you just want to free up some cash. But I don't think I'm making any sense at all while explaining why I'm trying to sell this watch, because I have had 4 Sarbs in total. I've had the rose gold, and I have which was the Sarb072, and I have the Sarb038, which is the gold champagne version, and then you have the Sarb033 and Sarb035. That's how much I love these watches. Like, I've been hunting those watches because I just love the design of them, and I think a lot of micro brands honestly can't compete. You have to think about all of it, if we just recap it all, right? 20 mil lug width. Like, I don't know how, maybe that was famous 10 years ago. I wasn't too much into watches, but 20 mil lug width is probably the best lug width ever made, especially plus 37, 38 millimeter watches. If you have 36 millimeter, you probably want an 18 mil just to kind of make it more proportionate. But for a 38 mil watch, you would want a 20 millimeter lug width. I think that's probably the best lug width for any watch, because it also makes it easier to interchange it with other 20 mil lug width watches, and also just buying the same leather straps instead of having a collection of 18 mil lugs, 18 millimeter leather straps, and 19 millimeter leather straps, and 20 mil, 21, and so forth. You want 20 mil lug width. That's great. Lug to lug of 40 mil, right? It's not huge, it's not small. Essentially making it interchanging with a dress watch and a sports watch. That's why it functions on so many levels, right? The lug width of 44 mil just makes it formal. It makes it elegant, but it's not that small where you would go, you know what, that's a dress watch. It's still large enough where you would go, it works as a sports watch and also as a dress watch. So it's an everyday purpose watch, honestly. You have the casing, which only Seiko can craft. You know, you have some beautiful lines where it kind of separates the upper part from the middle part, and you have a dual tone finish on it, you know, where you can see the upper part of the case just fusions into the, you know, the lower part of the case. And I love the dual tone finish, right? You have the brush finish, and then you have the polished finish, which, you know, again, it gives a nice look to it. The bracelet is fine, you know, a beautiful hinge. I've always been interested in this part. I think this is the right way to produce a hinge. And I think the bracelet in itself, I think it's secure enough. It's not the most secure bracelet, but I think it's fair. I mean, I don't feel like it's ever coming off. Maybe it's an additional protection, like an over clasp or something like that, to kind of make sure it really does not go off would have been nice. But otherwise, I think it's fine. I don't think I'm ever thinking like it's falling off. I've never thought that. It has an exhibition case back, especially for somebody who's new into the watch world. I think exhibition case back for me was a must. It's not as must anymore, which is funny how that changes. Like before, I would love to just sit and look at the movement. So it was like a must for me. I need an exhibition case back, but today that's not necessarily the case. It has a sign crown. I love that, the way they produced that, designed that S. I think it just looks nice. And again, highly polished bezel as well, which does get scratches. I will admit to that. I don't think it's bad though. I think these watches are meant to be worn, so you would have seen scratches regardless. But I think you definitely see them a little bit more accentuated on these simply because of it being highly polished. So if you're out there looking for a Sarb and you see that it's scratched on the bezel, which I think is fine because it's hard to find a watch that it's not, especially when you have this type of high polished finish to it. And the dial is just incredible, man. Again, I would love for people to comment in the description, and I would love for people to say it's overhyped, it's not great design, it's not great quality, because I don't get that. I think there's a lot of micro brands out there showing us what's possible, and I think this is what Seiko should have continued with. I mean, if this watch was released by Seiko today, it would have cost $1,000. Honestly, it would have cost that much because it has all the properties of a watch that somebody wants. And I think the reason why people are saying it's overhyped is simply because it was released at $300. I don't think people can get away from that. People are still focusing on this watch. It's a $300 watch. You have to understand that was underselling the watch. This watch should have never have costed $300. Even back then, it should have cost $500 at retail. But I think people just have a hard time like getting away from the fact that you could have gotten this watch at $300, because this is not a $300 watch. And I think when you compare it to that price point, you always compare it to that, and you're always thinking to yourself, man, that's a $300 watch. You have to get away from that mindset. It's not a $300 watch. And it's okay if this watch is not for you, but to say it's overhyped, it's not worth it, it's kind of wild. I don't understand how you get to that conclusion, because even me selling this watch, I'm not selling it because I dislike it. I just sell it because I want to free up some cash. I want understand my collection a little bit better. These watches are great, whether you want to own them or not, whether they're for you or not. You really cannot understate like how great these watches are. So they're unique, but I think there's a lot of micro brands out there making more interesting watches for sure. I think that's a valid point. But yeah, but they're not overhyped for sure. Maybe if you like somebody like me who just, you know, deemed it as the greatest Seiko of all time, I think somebody can look at me and go, well, you're a bit crazy for saying that. But honestly, like, these are great watches, and I think it's fair that they get the love that they deserve. And I think there's a lot of watches, Seiko watches out there today that's not getting a lot of love simply because of the price point, and not like the watches not being as simple as they're supposed to, or have that like clear-cut design philosophy like these watches do have. Like, I definitely, when I see these watches, I can definitely see this as a simple casual business watch. That's how I view them, right? They can, I mean, I said they can interchange as a dress watch. I don't think they can, because it doesn't have a dome crystal. It's maybe a little bit too thick, but otherwise, you know, these works on so many facets. Again, I've been rambling a lot in this video. It's just a great watch, man. I think I made this review mainly because I'm gonna sell the Sarb035, but I might rebuy it in like a month or two, just because I want them and I want to make maybe a proper review of it. But, you know, thank you for watching. If you have any questions, let me know in the comments, and please comment. I would love to know about your experience with the watch, and I also would love to know about whether you would want to buy it and why you have not bought it if you are interested in it. And what do you think about the price point? Do you think it's fair? Do you not think it's fair? Let me know in the comments, man. I would love for you to tell me that, because I would just love to hear about other people's opinions on the watch, honestly. Thank you for watching, man. I don't think that framing in the end was that great, but thank you for watching, man. I appreciate it.